What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another Big Man on Campus podcast. I'm your host, the Big Man on Campus. Today, we're continuing our NCAA Tournament bracket breakdown. Today, we're taking a look at the South and the Midwest. We did the East and we did the West with Reegs the other night. We welcome another great college basketball handicapper to the show to take a look at the South and Midwest. He's a friend of the show, Greg Peterson. He's got the college basketball betting edition podcast, all sorts of stuff on VSIN. Greg, how you doing?
I am doing great, Jeff. Always a pleasure to join you.
Yeah, usually I'm on your show, but now you're doing some of the stuff that I have going on. Glad to have you as always. Greg, I asked Reegs this. I'll ask you. Obviously, we are on the precipice of the tournament. It's already gotten going, basically. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. We had the two playing games last night. But I really just wanted to kind of just go back a little bit. Were there any issues you had with this bracket? I mean, was there anyone glaring, left out? Anybody that you are surprised that was not in this field?
There really wasn't. I was very happy that BMOC got into the NCAA tournament because I thought they were going to be left out. Now, if I personally were picking the bracket, I would have had UNC Greensboro and Lipscomb in the field. But the fact that TCU got left out, a team that lost on their home floor to Lipscomb, that made me quite happy. So, all in all, I would actually give the committee a pretty good grade because I didn't think they would do as well as they did.
Yeah, this is the first time I feel like in a while, Greg, where I didn't really have any issue. I mean, I would have liked to have seen Lipscomb maybe fly in there or Greensboro, but usually it's some random team that you're just wondering how the hell did they not get into the field. We had like St. Mary's last year. There weren't any glaring ones this year, which I was happy to see. Greg, let's get started with the. We'll start with the South first. Obviously, your number one seed, Virginia. Listen, the Cavaliers have a lot to prove. I know you and I know at the beginning of the season, you weren't as high on Virginia as maybe I was. Obviously, got the chip on their shoulder after last year's embarrassing loss to UMBC. I will say this, Greg, and look, clearly, I hate to say I don't think we're going to see a 16-1 this year, but you're a guy that looks over every team in America. This Gardner Webb team have some success against the pack line. This is a team that can really shoot the ball. I hope Virginia is not coming into this game maybe just there's no way we lose this one this year. We're going to come in. This Gardner Webb team can score the basketball, 38% from three. They have a pretty good penance of getting to the line. Good free throw percentage team. Good with effective field goal. This is one that I definitely want to make sure. I hope Virginia's not sleepwalking in. But what's your overall thoughts on this bracket? We got Tennessee, just kind of from the top tier. Do you think Virginia gets to the Final Four?
I do think that Virginia gets to the Final Four. I think that chalk holds the form in regards to everything to the Elite Eight, and I think that Virginia is going to be able to roll. With that said, when it comes to these round of 64 matchups, I did take the points with both Colgate and Gardner Webb because, like you said, both these teams are able to shoot some threes. Now, Gardner Webb, very undersized team. I think guys like Jack Salt and Mamadou Dikite going to be able to clean up the glass in that one. But when you take a look at Colgate, I think that they could actually hang within single digits of Tennessee because they've got Ravanuskis and then also Wyatt Raymond. Two guys are 6'8" and 6'10" that shoot over 40% from three. They've got a very nice point guard in Jordan Burns that gives out nearly 6 assists per game. I'm actually thinking that Colgate could make things a little bit interesting for Tennessee, who the last time they played a Patriot League team in the NCAA tournament, that was a 2-15 matchup against American. American was like within a couple points in the second half of that game. I know that it was a very, very long time ago, obviously, but I do think that Colgate could make things interesting for Tennessee.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Greg. I mean, you look at a Colgate, three players that shoot it above 41% from three. You mentioned Jordan Burns, kind of the diminutive point guard. Obviously, I think when you look at Tennessee, can you stop Schofield and Williams? Rapolas Ivanauskas, as you mentioned, it comes from Northwestern. He's done a hell of a job. He's one of the better players in the conference. It was really a nice shot in the arm for them in the middle of the season. But Jack Ferguson, Will Raymond, all these guys can shoot the ball at a really high level. Pretty good offensive rebounding team. I agree with you. I like Tennessee, obviously to win this game, but to say that Colgate can hang, I think this is just too many points. Colgate's a lot better than I think people think. I think if I'm St. Joe's, Matt Lango would be at the top of my list if I'm looking for a coach. Lango with a lot of Philly connections. He's the guy I would look at. And I think his boys here hang tight. Greg, couple of obviously we see these 8-9 matchups every year. You got a couple of not blue bloods, but Power Five teams here. Even in that 5-12 matchup, Oregon's a trendy upset pick. Obviously, we know what both these teams. This could be an ugly game from an offensive perspective. There's a couple games in this side of the bracket where points could be at a premium. I mean, seemingly every matchup, Greg, whether it's Villanova, St. Mary's, even Purdue, Old Dominion. I do want to highlight, though, Kansas State, UC Irvine. No Dean Wade, we think, if we've seen the video this morning, he's on crutches, and it doesn't look good. Are you buying in? Do they have still a chance that they can win this game? We all know Irvine, very good at the rim. Outside of Maoiang, I mean, what do they really have without Dean Wade? This offense is really bad, Greg, without him.
They are pretty bad, but what I will say is that they now have Katir Diarra back in the lineup. He was missing for a lot of Big 12 plays, so they do have some good backcourt pieces, and I just don't have faith that guys like Robert Cartwright and Hazard are going to be able to do the job for UC Irvine. That is my big trepidation with them, just because with UC Irvine, you've got a bunch of guys that they give you right around 10 or so points per game, but who's really going to take this game over? Who's going to be able to give this team like that 20-point performance to push them over the top? I'm not sure, and I do like what Xavier Sneed is able to do as a nice stretch player as well. And keep in mind, this Kansas State team last year, with pretty much the exact same roster, made a run to the Elite Eight. Now we all know that they got some pretty good breaks in regards to the seeding along the way. They obviously got to face UMBC in the round of 32, which I don't think anyone saw coming. But I do think that Kansas State is going to be able to get past a UC Irvine team that, like you said, very good on defense. But really, what are you going to get on offense?
Yeah, that's a good point by you. You look at UC Irvine all season. I mean, you're really solid out in the Big West, and you look at a lot of people. I mean, this is a lot of people's upset special. This team hasn't lost since January 16th. But I got to look at it and say to myself, when you stepped up a competition, what were you able to do this year if you're Irvine? You look at like-minded teams. This K-State team, 23rd in Ken Palm ratings. You look at, they did beat St. Mary's 80-75, lost to Utah State, got beaten up in that game, beat up by Butler, lost to Pacific. They did beat Montana, decent win there, Texas A&M, but look, K-State is, when healthy, a top 25 team. Problem is, they're not going to be healthy. I've seen Dean Wade. I've seen them without Dean Wade. You mentioned DR, good point. I have a hard time thinking that the under looks like the best play. There aren't going to be a lot of points in this game. Greg, Oregon's won 8 in a row. They went to the Final Four a few years ago. Pritchard is, in the last few games, been terrific. I mean, everything he's done has seemingly worked. Lewis King's looked real good. Greg, let me ask you, with Bol in this team, where do you think they'd be right now?
That is such a good question. Now, what's interesting with Oregon is we did see them lose as a 25-point favorite at home when they did have a healthy Bol. So I don't think that they would have lived up to the Final Four hype that we had coming into the year. With that said, I think they probably would have won the Pac-12. I think that they would have probably been maybe a little bit better than what Washington is right now, maybe like a fringe top 25 team, a 6 or a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. I mean, Bol, 7'2", guy that was able to can threes. But we saw this team really come alive when they got Lewis King in the lineup. I felt like he was really the X factor for this team that ignited them down the stretch.
Yeah, I thought Lewis King looked really good as well, particularly in some of those late Pac-12 tournament games. But you look at these defenses, Greg, 3rd and 18th in adjusted efficiency. I mean, terrific effective field goal. I mean, both these teams are top 30 in three-point defense. Look, you got to agree, Greg, this is first to 60 wins. I mean, this is 60-56, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a really low-scoring game. I did take it over. I do think that both teams will be able to get to 60. I just don't see much else. I think that this is going to be more or less a 64-60 style game. So it's not like I'm telling you that we're going to see Loyola Marymount of 1990 here or anything like that. But with that said, I do think that Wisconsin's going to be able to put the ball in the basket because they do have a lot of guys that are able to shoot threes. And you even take a look at Oregon. You've got a guy like a Victor Bailey that comes off the bench and shoots 40% for three. But Wisconsin's able to counter with Brevin Pritzel, who comes off the bench, gives his team right around 6 points, shoots 40% for three. Demetric Trice does a nice job in that regard as well. Nate Reavers, I like as a stretch player. And then Paul White on the other end for Oregon, another stretch player that shoots from three. I do think that Wisconsin pulls this out just because they have the best true low post presence in Ethan Happ. with Oregon, you've got those stretch big men, but they aren't really willing to go as physical. Kenny Wooten does a good job of being able to block shots, but he's not necessarily the best rebounder. And I think that Wisconsin's going to be able to get more second and third chance opportunities.
That's a good point, Greg. You and I talked on your show about some of these certain matchups where Ethan Happ had to play a physical big. Charles Bassey at West Kentucky, Jordan Murphy at Minnesota. You even look at like a Nick Ward at Michigan State. He didn't really have to face Nick Ward this year, but you look at the two games when they played Minnesota with a Jordan Murphy, he struggled a little bit, Ethan Happ. He doesn't want to play that physical game, but I like the point you made. Oregon's bigs are more of those four kind of guys that like to go out in the perimeter, kind of more block shot, lanky types. They're not really a physical group. That's a good point by you. I think that could be a matchup they can exploit down low. I think these teams are toss-uppy, but I'm kind of feeling, in a way, I feel like Wisconsin will find a way to get it done here and grind this one out. Greg, let me ask you, who wins who wins this side of the bracket? Are you going to stick with Virginia? Give me your winner and give me a dark horse. I mean, a dark horse, let's say 6 or lower.
I do think that Virginia is going to be able to pull this one off. I do like the way that they're playing their style right now. And then, oh man, in regards to a dark horse, that is a good one because I do feel like if Wisconsin could be able to pull off an upset, I know that that's a 5 seed, that's not 6 or lower, but Wisconsin is a team that has seen Virginia this year. When they played the last time, Wisconsin lost, but at the very least they were competitive, and it's such a slow game. If Wisconsin hits just a couple more threes, there is a chance for them to be able to get to the Elite Eight, and then I do think that they might be able to slow down Tennessee, but I just think that it is going to be Virginia's to lose in this spot.
I'm going to throw out one, Greg, sleeper-wise, and they're not really a sleeper. I'm going to go Villanova. I think Villanova could give Purdue some trouble. Purdue's not a very good three-point defensive team. I think if those two teams advance, I think Villanova could give Purdue a run, go to the Sweet 16. Obviously, Tennessee will be tough playing them. Obviously, I don't think they have a real good matchup for Schofield or Williams, but I think they could at least make a Sweet 16 run. This side of the bracket stinks, though. I mean, there's not a lot of talent here, especially from you have a team like Oregon who's just kind of playing well right now. No Dean Wade. So, I agree, though. Virginia's my pick. I have them in the championship game, to be honest. I think they're just too good this year. Braxton Key has been a great addition offensively. Greg, did you think they'd be this good offensively?
I did not. I mean, they're number 4 in the country in regards to offensive efficiency. They've got Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, and Kyle Guy all shooting over 40% from three. You've got Huff, a very nice, versatile player for this team. Heck, we've even seen Clark be able to step up and give this team some scoring as well. You get it from all angles with this team. And you do bring up the possibility of Villanova versus Purdue in the round of 32. I'm not so sure if Purdue was able to get past Old Dominion. Old Dominion, a top 10 team in the country with regards to defensive efficiency, 7th in regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Carson Edwards takes the most shots of any player in the NCAA tournament, and he only shoots 34% from three. If Old Dominion is able to force Carson Edwards to take 25-plus shots, I know that Old Dominion stinks on offense themselves. They could just turn this into an ugly 55-50 style game.
Yeah, I mean Carson Edwards is also a heinous defender. That's a good point. I mean, all you need to do. We saw it last night, Greg. Sometimes a team can just get hot. It really doesn't matter, how well they shoot. I mean, Prairie View A&M shot 31% coming into the game from three. They eclipsed their high and free 3-point shots made this year. Old Dominion. I just want to point this out. 119 in the country. In 3-point percentage. They were 4th in the conference. This team can stroke it. They have good guard play in Stitt and Caver. That was a game that I had my own as well. Just looks a bit too high to me. I would have put it more like 9.5, 10 as opposed to 12.5. Greg, let's kind of move on here. We're kind of in agreement. Virginia moseys on. One last thing, though, Greg. You look at Virginia. If there is an issue with this team, you look at their losses this year. They struggled against those long teams, which most teams do. Obviously, we know Duke pretty long with Zion and R.J. Barrett. Look at Florida State, really kind of beat them up on the block. I mean, you look at some of their bigs. I mean, they go so deep. That's the big concern. I think if Virginia's big concern is Tennessee, that's it. I think other than that, they should waltz to the Final Four. But that's a pretty big, bullseye that's on their back, Greg, isn't it?
I do agree with you. That is a big bullseye that is on their back. And you just mentioned the issues with Virginia. It is one of those things where you did see it in so many of their losses. So I do think that you bring up a good point. I do think that having that chip on their shoulder is going to be so huge, though, because you know that Tony Bennett is one of the best coaches out there in all of college basketball. And I just think that he's going to have his team so motivated. And you got to think that these guys still know exactly how bad that Sting felt a year ago when they got bounced.
Agreed. Do want to welcome in everyone that is checking out the show live. We'll get to a few questions at the end. If you have any, feel free to throw them on the chat. Greg, a couple of people are saying you're a bit faint. Maybe we could fix that. Other than that, you sound just fine, my friend. Let's move on to the Midwest, our final one to take a look at. North Carolina, the number 1 seed. Greg, do you agree North Carolina is the weakest 1 seed?
Certainly do. North Carolina played very good down the stretch, and they're a very good rebounding team in general. So I do like that about them. But sometimes their guard play is a little bit hit or miss. Kobe White has been doing a nice job of being able to step up for this team so far this year. I do like what they're getting out of Nasir Little and Brandon Robinson in regards to their bench play. But Luke May is a guy that's sometimes a little bit of a heat check guy. He's a stretch player that only shoots right around 33 to 34% from three, and I do think that they are a little bit vulnerable.
One thing at North Carolina I really like this year is defensively. I mean, they have really improved defensively. 10th in efficiency, really been solid all year. And I think that's kind of one of those things that could set them apart this year. They can get out in transition with Kobe White. I think in that first game, Greg, it wouldn't surprise me if they put 100 up on the board. Iona is a terrible defensive team. And look, if you know anything about Iona, they're not going to change their spots, Greg. I mean, they're going to play their game, even if it means that they're going to give up, 95, 100 points. Tim Klutz really doesn't get away from how they play. They're 46th in tempo, 51st in possession length. They go quick, Greg. This is going to be a high-scoring game, isn't it?
That's why we're seeing this as the highest total on the board as of right now, unless if we see a very high total in Gonzaga versus Prairie View, which I think that one opened right around 152, which I was a little bit surprised, or I should say Fairleigh Dickinson for that matter. But that one opened up at 152, which I thought that was low, but the highest total on the board as of right now, and rightfully so. I could easily see this one being more like 90 to 70 or something like that. So I do think that maybe it's a couple too many points. But like you said, I could easily see North Carolina get to 90 plus in this game. Iona played better defense towards the back half, but when you look at when they played better competition, they were dreadful.
Yeah, odd scheduling spot to put this at 9:20. I don't really understand the point of that. This game's not going to be good at all. I think I agree though. I think this is 95, 68 or something. I'm gonna look to lay it here. I think North Carolina and Gonzaga are two teams that I think will actually destroy their opponent. Greg, obviously the 2 seed here is Kentucky. Kentucky concerns right now. PJ Washington in a walking boot, according to some people. They got a tough second round matchup, Greg, with the winner of Wofford and Seton Hall. Wofford, the big darling. Everyone loves this group this year. Wofford's got a real test, though, Greg. I mean, Seton Hall's really solid. Miles Powell's fantastic. This is going to be a great matchup. Could be one of the better matchups of the season. What do you like here in Wofford, Seton Hall?
I do like Wofford because they've got four guys that are able to shoot at least 40% from three. Meanwhile, Seton Hall, Miles Powell and Miles Kale, the only two guys on this team that shoot over 30% from three for Seton Hall. Seton Hall relies just too much on Miles Powell. He pours in over 22.5 points per game. That's double what anyone else on the roster is giving this team. Now, you do have some contributions from guys like Quincy McKnight, Michael Nezzi able to pull in a couple of rebounds and everything like that. But I like the way that Storm Murphy runs the point for Wofford. I believe he only has like 1.5 turnovers per game and at the point guard spot. And with how fast and how efficient Wofford is, I think that that's incredibly incredible. That's why Wofford is a top 10 team in the country in regards to offensive efficiency. And for Seton Hall, I just think that they're really going to struggle being able to contain Fletcher McGee, who is one of the best spot-up shooters in college basketball. I laid it here with the Terriers.
You look at Wofford. I think one of the things that kind of goes unnoticed with them is how good of a rebounding team they are. A great offensive and defensive rebounding team. Cam Jackson's been very good for them. They can rebound the basketball. It's one thing that's kind of underrated. And you make a good point with Powell. I mean, very dependent on him. Can they get someone else to step up? Miles Kale, Mamushkavili, can someone else step up? They already beat Kentucky this year. I don't know if they'll even get another shot at them, though this year. Houston, a team a lot of people like, Greg. I'm a big Ron Hunter fan, but I don't think this is a great matchup for that team. I think the upsets could come in this bracket. You obviously look at Auburn. We all know how dependent they are on the three-point shot. Greg, when you talk about being dependent, I'm not sure there's a team more dependent on a particular shot in America. You look at this year, 7th in the country in point distribution from the three-point line. Over 43% of their points come from that three-point line. This New Mexico State team, well coached. Chris Jans, a hell of a coach. Real good defensive team. Real solid in the half court. That's one thing you always love. And they're one of the best rebounding teams you'll find. This is the upset for me. I think it's New Mexico State. I think they finally knock off a 12 seed.
I believe so as well. I am all about New Mexico State. And we have a team in New Mexico State that goes 13 deep. If we know one thing about Auburn's defense is that they really rely on being able to get steals. They have so much athleticism that they're able to tire out a team. Hard to tire out a team that is 13 deep. With New Mexico State, they're able to make hockey line changes and just bring in so many other guys. So I do think that New Mexico State is going to be able to win this game as well. A.J. Harris, their point guard, transferred over from Ohio State. He's been doing a good job of being able to not turn the ball over. They have so many guys like Eli Chua and company that are able to come in, give this team some solid rebounding. And New Mexico State, number one team in regards to rebound rate in college basketball. And we've seen Auburn, even in the SEC tournament, there were some games where they were getting out-rebounded by 15 in some of those games. I just think that New Mexico is going to eat up the glass. They're going to get second and third chances. And Auburn, I know that New Mexico State's three-point shooting defense is right around 100th in the country. That's comparable to Alabama's. And the last time they played Alabama held them to below 70 points. I think that New Mexico State's going to be able to get their style, and I think they're going to be able to win this game.
Greg, you look at things about New Mexico State that are just fascinating. You look at the bench minutes, which you mentioned. Number one in bench minutes, 49.8% of their minutes come from the bench. To set that in perspective, in this tournament, the second closest as far as bench minutes, UC Irvine at 41.8. So they're almost 8 minutes more than everyone else in the country as far as in this tournament from the bench perspective. An experienced team, each player averaging at least 2 years. And one thing that's really underrated in college basketball, Greg, is you look at the average height for this group. Not a big team, pretty small, frankly. They have a lot of guards, though, that can rebound the ball. There's nothing better than guards that can rebound. That's pretty fun. You have a guy like, not really a guard, but Eli Chua gets in there and rebounds. A.J. Harris. Anybody on this team has the ability to rebound. When you can just crash a glass like that, that's good news. I have New Mexico advancing here. And I, frankly, to be honest, Greg, have them advancing to the Sweet 16. I think they'll beat the winner of Kansas Northeastern as well. Northeastern, a team under Bill Cohen, who love to run a lot of ball screen offense. Vasa Pusica is terrific. One of those real good Serbian players. We always see those kids come over and do some great things at the next level. Pusica, a good player. They got Sean Osius back, which is good news in winning the CAA. They're fully healthy now, Greg. I'm not a big Kansas guy. What are your thoughts here on Northeastern?
I am very bearish on Kansas as well. I thought they got overseeded as a 4 seed. Right now, their top three-point shooter, Dedrick Lawson. You just don't know what you're going to get game to game out of guys like Ubaji. Quentin Grimes has been a big fat disappointment for this team. And they've got McCormick coming in at the starting forward spot. He's averaging like 4 points a game. He hasn't done much of anything for this team. Meanwhile, you've got Northeastern. So many guys like Bolden Brace that are able to shoot the three. Donnell Gresham, a nice stretch player that gives this team 12 points. He's able to reel in 5 rebounds. I know that Alex Green has been dominant down low, but he still has a 6'10", 250-pound body. I think that he's going to be able to D up with Dedrick Lawson, and he's going to be physical in the paint with them. I am all about Northeastern in the spot, and I have a Northeastern versus New Mexico State matchup.
Couldn't agree more. I think this is where we see a few upsets. A lot of good teams in this bracket. We'll get to some questions here in just a second. I just have one other one, Greg. Utah State, Washington. A lot of people love this 8-9 matchup. I thought, Utah State, I mean, for the record, I thought they were, maybe could have been a bit higher seated. What do you think about this matchup? Obviously, Utah State, very good at the rim, well coached. I love everything about Utah State, really. Washington's kind of faded a little bit, but Greg, I said at the beginning of the season, I thought Washington was good enough to make a run. I really don't care much about what happened late in the season. We know this tournament can really flip it on. I wouldn't be surprised. I think people forget about Washington just because they did struggle so much. They had 2 losses to Oregon. They lost a bad game to Cal, but this zone is really good. Noah Dickerson's fantastic. Thibault's the best player no one talks about. They get good guard play from Crisp and Jalen Noel. I think Washington's being undervalued, but this is a tough matchup here.
It is a very tough matchup. I do agree with you there, and this is one of the toughest games for me to pick on the board. I did wind up going with Washington, though. The big reason why, Matisse Thybulle averages over 3.4 steals per game. No other player in the country averages 3 steals or more for an individual. So I really like that. Jalen Noel pours in 16 points per game, shoots over 40% from 3. David Crisp, a good shooter. And then when you take a look at the other side for Utah State, they're one of the top 5 teams in the country with regards to rebound rate, and they've got a very, very special guard in Sam Merrill. He pours in 21 points, 4 assists, assist to turnover ratio greater than 2, shoots over 40% from 3. But who else out there in the backcourt really scares you for Utah State? Meanwhile, for Washington, you've got guys like Dominic Green that are able to come off the bench and shoot some threes. I like Noah Dickerson down low. I think he'll be able to match up with Neemias Queta, and I think for that reason, I have to go with Washington and advance them in my bracket.
I couldn't agree more, Greg. I think Washington is that kind of sleeper team to make a run. I think if again, you're going to have a tough matchup against North Carolina, but I think they can. Who knows what you can do in a zone against North Carolina. Look, though, we didn't really talk much about Houston. I think Houston's good and all, but I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw in Kentucky, a team that I think can play them at pretty well. What do you think here, Greg? Who advances? Who gets to the Final Four? To me, I have Kentucky. What do you like here?
I do have a North Carolina versus Kentucky Elite 8 matchup as well. I am right there with you. This will be the second time in 3 years that they match up, and I would have Kentucky being able to win this game. I think that by that time, any injury concerns with P.J. Washington will be cleared up because it sounds like his injury is probably going to limit him in the first weekend, but I think by the time the second weekend comes around, he'll be full go. And even if he's not, you still have Reed Travis. Richards is a guy that's pulled in 15 rebounds in a couple of his games. And I think the real X factor for Kentucky, the fact is that they shoot the free throws really well with Tyler Hero, the second best free throw shooter in this entire tournament, shooting 94% of the line. That is huge for this team.
Greg, I might get some flack for this, but I'm going to say it. I would have PG Washington on the bench, suited up, but I wouldn't have him play 1 minute in this game. You don't need him. You'll beat Abilene Christian with Brad Calipari in this game if you wanted. Brad Calipari is a red shirt, and he's not going to play anyway, but that's how much of an advantage they have. Abilene Christian just lost their 2 best players. Jalone Friday's gone. They also lost B.J. Maxwell as well. All due respect to them, nice work getting into the tournament here. Stephen F. Austin, though, had a down year. New Orleans struggled to score in the final game. It wasn't a great year for the Southland, Greg. All due respect to Abilene, but if I'm Kentucky here, I'd sit P.J. Washington. Look, if it got interesting, put him in. But, I mean, Greg, I don't think that'll happen, but, I mean, wouldn't you agree that just let him heal up a little bit?
I do agree with you there. Abilene Christian, 7 years ago, was sub 500 at the D2 level. So, got to give him a lot of respect here and everything like that. And if P.J. Washington doesn't play, I'll probably take the points here with Abilene Christian because 22 points is 22 points. But, man, the only thing that Abilene Christian I can say for them is that they do a good job of being able to turn over opponents. Their guards have active hands, so that is something that you like. But like you said, they are dealing with some guys that are no longer on the team. They're injured, they're suspended, what have you. So I do think that this is a spot where Kentucky should be able to roll and roll easily.
There you have it, Greg. The South and the Midwest. We both like Virginia and Kentucky to come out. Not really going off the board here or anything. A couple sleepers, maybe a team in New Mexico State get to the Sweet 16 up top. Maybe Wisconsin or Villanova. Greg, couple of questions here from the chat. I want to ask you here. Brandon, big man, am I crazy for seeing Louisville as being a Cinderella? Greg, Louisville with the odd matchup against Minnesota in the first round. We all know who coaches Minnesota and who might be on the sidelines or at practice if you're Minnesota. You get his old team, kind of a weird connection there. I can't see Louisville making a run. I mean, Michigan State and LSU are really good. I'm not even sure. I don't even have Louisville winning the first game, to be honest. But what do you think about Louisville, Greg?
I do think that Louisville's going to be able to get past Minnesota just because Minnesota, you just don't know what you're going to get from their shooting. Guys like Kauscher, he's a good three-point shooter, but I still remember when he was over 10 from three against North Florida. Amir Coffey shoots in the low 30s from three-point range. Looked good in the Big Ten tournament. And you do have to like the fact that Tucker is the leader in total rebounds in the NCAA tournament, but I think that Jordan Nwora is a tough matchup for them. He's a good stretch player that's able to shoot in the mid-30s from three. And then Kristen Cunningham is a very efficient point guard. And with Louisville, they're, I believe, the best free throw shooting team in this entire NCAA tournament with Ryan McMahon shooting 95% at the free throw line. So I do think that Louisville is a team that's not going to necessarily beat themselves, but we've also seen them not be able to close out games. So even if they are close against Michigan State, you always have that trepidation in your mind.
Top teams in this tournament, Greg, at the free throw line, they are Mississippi, 78.3%, Liberty, 78%, Louisville, 77.5%, Gonzaga at 76.7%, and the Tennessee Volunteers at 76.7%. Greg, you look at the worst free throw shooting teams in this tournament. Oregon is bad. Florida
St.
are bad.
Louis. St. Louis is awful at the
Yep.
line.
Yep. St. Louis, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going down far enough here, Greg. Let me go down the whole way to the bottom. You would be right. St. Louis is dead last. They're actually second worst in the country.
Manhattan's the only team that
Yep.
shoots worse at the free throw line in the country than St. Louis. That was an ultimate fade pick for me right there.
No, you're 100% right. Also, Greg, I will say this with an asterisk. UCF is 64.5%, but a lot of it has to do with Taco Fall. Everyone else is actually fairly good on that team. The Wisconsin Badgers, who we talked about, that could be interesting in a close game. Georgia State at 65.6%, Old Dominion at 66%, and Kansas State. Kansas State, again, to stay in a game like this where you're going to be without one of your better players, you can almost make it better at the free throw line. This isn't a team that's very good. And then Northern Kentucky as well. The Norse at 67%. So that's interesting. Greg, a team someone's asking about tonight. Any thoughts on Arizona State St. John's?
I do think that Arizona State's going to be able to win this game, and it's because Arizona State is going to dismantle St. John's on the glass. St. John's one of the bottom teams in this entire tournament in regards to rebound rate. Their top rebounder is LJ Figueroa, a guy who was shooting over 40% from three to begin the year, and then he just really tailed off towards the end of it. Mustafa Heron is fully healthy now, but with that said, I like the way that Remy Martin stepped up in the backcourt. Lou Dort gets a little bit too loose with the ball, but who's really going to be able to match up with him on St. John's? Because Marvin Clark is a guy that gets into a whole lot of foul trouble. He has one of the highest foul rates of any player out there in this tournament. So I do think that with Zylan Cheatham being such a versatile stretch player, I think St. John's is going to have no answer for that.
Yeah, there's definitely some things about Arizona State you definitely like. One of which, though, you don't like is the inability to make free throws. One of the worst in the tournament. You talked about Marvin Clark, Greg. I mean, you look at St. John's. I mean, they really don't get a lot of minutes outside of these five. C.D. Cada can give you 15, 12 to 15. Yeah, Brian Trimble gave you 12, and that's about it. There's not a lot of bodies for this St. John's team. A few more questions, Greg, then we'll get you out of here. How far do you see K-State going if they would have had Wade for the tournament, and how far do they make it without him? I would say, to me, without him, I don't think they win the first game. I think they let me rephrase that. I think they can win without him in this game, but I think that's pretty much going to be it. I think they would lose to Oregon or Wisconsin. What do you think, Greg?
I think they'd be able to get past UC Irvine, but I think a Dean Wade-less Kansas State team does not get by Wisconsin because I think, once again, Ethan Happ, he wouldn't have to go up against that physical big. And I know that Dean Wade is a little bit more of a stretch guy, but he does a very good job down low. If they don't have him fully healthy against Wisconsin, I think it would just be complete doomsday for Kansas State in that round of 32 matchup.
Where do you think they'd go with him?
With him, I do think they would get past Wisconsin. I do think they would get to the Sweet 16. I certainly think they would meet their match against Virginia. I mean, Jack Salt would be able to, I think, pick apart Dean Wade. And then you've got all those three-point shooters for Virginia. I know that Kansas State has that great defense, but I think that Virginia would just be the better team in a game that would be just played so slowly. That would be another game, just like if they would play against Wisconsin, where first team to 55 points wins.
DJ Jukebox. I think Texas Tech will deem themselves to losing their conference tournament and go deep in the Final Four. What do you guys think? I disagree. I think they will lose to Gonzaga, as painful as that is. I do like Texas Tech, but I just think Gonzaga is too complete. The problem that Texas Tech has is, unlike other teams, they can go cold real quick if those threes aren't falling. Greg, you look at Texas Tech, it's kind of been a tale of two seasons. At the beginning of the year, they couldn't score. Lately, though, they've had a lot of success scoring. What do you think about Texas Tech? They can get to the Final Four, but it's going to be all about what team shows up. At least the one thing I know about Gonzaga is they're always going to be very good on defense or on offense.
I agree with you. And Texas Tech, the number one team in regards to defensive efficiency in the country. And I like the way that Moretti stepped up, shoots over 40% from three, very good free throw shooter. Jared Culver does a little bit of everything for this team. But with that said, Texas Tech, once again, one of those teams that, other than Brandon Francis, they don't get a whole lot off the bench. And I think that Gonzaga, with all that firepower, would be able to pick them apart. I do see a Gonzaga versus Texas Tech matchup happening. I just don't think that Texas Tech has quite the firepower to be able to get past the Bulldogs, though.
Team with the best chance to knock off UNC other than Kentucky. I would say, I don't know, probably Houston, right, Greg?
It would be Houston just because you do have some very good rebounders and they do a very good job of being able to cut off the arc. So I probably would be in agreement there. I think that North Carolina certainly going to be able to get to the Elite Eight. I don't see there being any trip-ups before that spot, but I do think that they will meet their match when they face it against Kentucky.
I'm telling you, don't give up on Washington. If they can get past Utah State, I think they'll give North Carolina a game. They're a pretty long team themselves. Greg, how many minutes do you have here? You have a couple more minutes?
I have a couple more.
All right. Let's do 2 or 3 more. If you or Greg were a coach, how much would you need to be down to throw in the towel and stop fouling? Well, I mean, if it's under 30 seconds and I'm down at least 8, I stop fouling. What about you, Greg?
We've seen so many of these teams. I remember Kansas State against Loyola Chicago. I think Bruce Redbird's team was fouling down 14 with 30 seconds to go, so that was ridiculous. I would say if you're down double digits with 45 seconds or less, that's when you say, you know what, the season's over.
Am I crazy seeing Marquette making a bit of a run? They're just not playing well enough. I know we can kind of flip the page and everything, but I don't know. I think Murray matches up pretty well with them. I actually have Marquette losing in the first round.
I do too. I think that Murray State is going to be able to win this game because Murray State, one of the best teams in the country with regards to making their 2-point shots in regards to percentage, and then they do a good job of being able to cut off the 3-point arc. And Marcus Howard just didn't look right in that Big East tournament. He was dealing with a little bit of a wrist injury. If Marquette doesn't get like 30-plus points out of Marcus Howard, they're not winning this game. I
agree. The supporting cast, I just don't know if it's as good as Murray's. I know they're kind of equal. But, Greg, I had this question posed to me the other day. If Marcus Howard and Morant both scored 25, who wins?
I would go with Murray State because I think that Shaq Buchanan, a guy that averages 14 points per game, and then you've got Brown out there in the backcourt. He's able to make a couple threes. I think they're very complete. And Sam Hauser, I know shoots well from three, but it just feels like he's such a hit-or-miss player.
Big man, please don't tell me you or Greg buy into this Yale beating LSU thing. What do you think, Greg?
I think that Yale's going to be able to hang in there at the very least because LSU, you can tell with the interim head coach, he's not Will Wade. But with that said, I don't know how Yale's going to be able to match up with that front line of LSU. You've got 4 dominant big men, Naz Reid, Darius Days, Emmett Williams, and Cavell Bigby Williams. It's just too much size for Yale. I think Yale can hang within single digits. I can't see them pulling off the upset, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I think they can win, but I think they have enough size to do something. I mean, Jordan Bruner's pretty good. Paul Atkinson can give them some minutes. One's good enough. Do I think they win? No, but I'm not a big LSU guy. I've talked about that before. All right, we'll do one more, Greg. How will Montana match up without Jamar Ako?
He's been out for like half the year. So
Yeah.
Montana's been playing without him for a very long time. And they've got a guy in Saheed Bridget that averages 15 points, shoots over 45% from three. Ahmad Rory is really filling it up for this team. And Montana already saw Michigan last year. This is a rematch of a 3-14 matchup from last year's NCAA tournament. Is Montana going to be able to pull off the 15 over the 2? I don't see it. But with that said, I took the points, and I took the points on the opener with Montana without any hesitation.
These teams played last year, right, Greg? I think they did.
Yes, they did. 3-14 matchup.
Yeah. Greg Peterson, great stuff, man. We'll let you jump off, and I'll finish up the show. We got a few more questions. Greg, great stuff as always, man. Always look forward to chatting with you. I'm sure I'll talk to you again. Appreciate you coming on. Do me a favor, plug out where we can find your stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at @GUnit_81. I do the podcast That's Gold with Steve Heitner. That drops every Monday through Friday, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, and midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. I also drop College Hoops Overtime Betting. That is every single day. Give you a side and total on every game on the Vegas betting board. And then for That's Gold, it's obviously hosted by Steve Heitner, who you may remember as Kitty Banya from Seinfeld. On that one, we talk a little sports betting, talk a little guy talk, like food and drink, just have some jokes and everything like that. But both are very heavily involved with betting, and both are, I would say, good downloads. You can find them all at Apple, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts.
Very good, Greg. Thanks as always for joining us. We'll talk to you again real soon. Have a good day.
Big man, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Greg Peterson joining us. Whenever we can get him, it's always a great thing to have Greg involved. A great basketball guy with plenty of knowledge. We'll get to a few more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. Before we do, I want to tell all of you guys about MyBookie. MyBookie is your mainstay spot for college basketball action. You can get involved with a $50,000 bracket contest right now at MyBookie. They got all the lines up for the games. You can Bitcoin withdraw or deposit and get paid quicker than pretty much anybody. They have future odds. You can bet soccer, NASCAR, golf. They got the Masters up. And also, how about this, guys? If you're a old school Barstool fan, you can bet on the college basketball challenges that involve Pat McAfee. You can bet on things like, will Pat McAfee make over 23.5 threes in 5 minutes? You can bet on all sorts of stuff. You can bet on rough and rowdy at MyBookie if you're a Barstool guy. Check out all the stuff they have to offer. And how about this, guys? At MyBookie, you can bet on who will win the Texas Pinball Festival. So all you pinball handicappers can bet on pinball at MyBookie. Make sure you open an account today. Get in the action now before the tournament starts tonight or tomorrow. What you can do, you go to mybookie.ag, enter promo code when you open your new account. Use promo code BMOC. Get yourself a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. So if you put $200 on, they're going to give you a free $100 cash to bet on whatever you want. And it's just been announced that they've upped the March Madness contest to $75,000. So make sure you check out everything MyBookie has to offer. Use promo code BMOC now to get your 50% deposit bonus. And, guys, you're supporting the show. So make sure you do that. Let's go through a few more questions, then we'll wrap it up. We are recording this at Wednesday afternoon. So I'm not going to answer anything tonight. I might do a show later. If ODU managed to get past Purdue, how would they potentially match up with Villanova? There's a little postseason history between those two teams, and I'm curious to see how they would match up. Well, I think it would be an interesting game because I think, you look at Old Dominion. Greg talked about their ability to defend. When you defend against Villanova, you have to be able to defend the 3-point line. Villanova is very reliant on the 3 ball. This is a pretty good 3-point defense. Again, I wonder about Old Dominion's ability to score. I don't think they're going to beat Purdue. I think they can hang, but I don't think they're going to win. But I do think if Villanova plays Purdue, I think Villanova will beat Purdue. What else do we have here? Do I think Iowa State can beat Houston? No, I do not. Do you give VT a shot at getting past Duke? I give them a shot, but I don't give them a good shot. What does Buff have to do to make a run? They have to defend. Their defense isn't good enough. Do I think Old Dominion will get past St. Mary's? No, I don't think Old Dominion is going to get past Purdue. So that's null and void. And that's pretty much it, guys. Make sure you check out all the stuff that I do here on the channel. I'll be back a little bit later, maybe go over a little NIT and anything like that. Try to go through something quickly here. All of you have a great day. I also did do the East and West, did those with Barstool Reegs. Make sure you check those out as well. Thanks again to Greg Peterson for coming on and taking care of the South and Midwest previews with me. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching. I'm the Big Man on Campus. Have a great day.